Chris, you probably spent more time in Bob's house than probably anyone on this entire panel.
Take care, brother.
Ciao, guys.
Take care, Jeff.
Good seeing y'all, man.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeff.
Bye.
Okay, Jeff. Good
Chris,
seeing you.
you spent probably more time in Bob's house than anyone on the panel here. Give us a little bird's eye view of what your experience was at Bob's house when you would go there. I know he was like your Jewish grandfather or grandmother, or maybe father you never had, but what was the experience like?
It's surreal because you would go and, you know, as we can all attest, here's a little short Jewish chunky fat guy, pants falling down,
who smokes,
right? Smoking. And
Smoking cigarettes, yeah.
And he would come, you know, he'd always have, remember, outside the house, he'd always have that bag, like the camera, the heavy bag, right? It goes nowhere without it. So you go to his house and, like someone said, you know, did you walk through the door and he'd cook
Chris,
for you.
the house was in the middle of the Bronx. People don't realize this. Very Italian neighborhood of the Bronx.
In the Bronx, and, you know, he had, you'd walk in, there was a small kitchen table in a small kitchen, no dishwasher, old refrigerator like the ones that are made out of like heavy, crazy metal, stocked to the max with like food, usually mostly protein because he was a low carb guy. And then off to the right, he would have a living area which no one was allowed into. That was the living room, and it was dusty as hell, and it was all covered with plastic, like the furniture.
Covered with plastic. I was just going to say that.
and then he had two other rooms. One where you would sleep, which I loved because the mattress was worn out to death. Right. And the other room was where he had
the twin beds.
Yeah, it was a twin bed bed. Yeah.
That was Bob's room he grew up in.
Was it really?
Oh my God, Jerry.
I didn't know that.
And then he had the other room where he had a photo studio set up in, so he could take your pictures, if you know, with like a professional backdrop. And of course, the cave, which was the best part. You go down the stairs, and the basement would be dust everywhere. In the back of the basement, he'd have the old boiler, which would go on and off. And then he would have another refrigerator there with food and tons of photos that he never developed.
Rolls of film.
Bags and bags of film.
And then he had locked off, he had the garage, which he had converted to a storage area. But then, like Jeff King said, he had files everywhere, books everywhere, and a couple chairs, and he had the infamous mirror and scale.
Yep.
And, you know, you would go down there to be tortured. You know what? As a bodybuilder, you would go down there, in 2 days, you would say, God, I changed more in 2 days than I did in the last 9 weeks. Because he would, you know, you'd go to the gym, he would torture you in the gym. He would torture you in the gym, right, Matt?
What gym would he take you to? Metro Fit?
Metro.
We go to Metro
right.
Fit.
You're right. We would,
I worked there, by the way, for a year or two.
Who the manager was at the Metro in the era that we were going, but we were always allowed in, and even when Bob wasn't there, I'm with Bob Gruskin. They just waved me right by.
Well, Matt, you want to hear something funny? When I was in medical school, I was working there for this guy Ernie. He was a black guy. He ran the floor there, and when I would go in there, all your pictures would be on the wall, and I would stare at those pictures every single day. I remember seeing your picture up there, and Jeff King, and you know, all Bob's guys were up. DeFendis, all of them were on the wall with signed pictures. Probably you guys gave him autographed pictures when you go train there, and I would look at those and say, man, I want to look like those guys. I mean, that was probably around 90, 91.
Right,
well, Bob had the, Jerry can tell you, Matt can tell you, DeFendis can tell you, Bob had the ability to, you know, in terms of working with a bodybuilder, to know how to bring them in that era as wacky, full, and tight as possible.
Yep.
And if somebody was going to a show, if Matt Dufresne was at a show, or Jerry Scalese was at a show, or John DeFendis was at a show, and they didn't know Bob, but just knew of him, let's say, and they found out, oh, God, Bob Gruskin's here with Dave Palumbo, you know it was lights out for you.
Yeah.
Because Palumbo was going to be like crazy full, crazy tight, you know, tight in the right spots, and did all his homework. Someone said something about Bob that he was a perfectionist. That he was such a perfectionist, and he made you feel like you were the only guy who was prepping in the last 10 years. You know, I don't know where he found the time to prep all these people. You'd go down to the basement, Dave, and right, guys, he had a answer machine.
Yep.
And it would be like, he'd be out for like 5 hours, and he'd push the button and say, "You have 73 messages." Like,
And then we would make a game out of listening to them with him, and he'd be like, "Yeah, not this person. This guy's a jerk," and he just erased them as they went, and then he'd write down something when he wanted to call somebody back, you know?
yeah. Or it'd be like people like, "Bob, give me a call." Boop, hang up. "Bob, you're around? Give me a call." Same guy. "Bob, give me a call." You know, or it'd be like, "Yeah, Bob," you know, be people's complaints or people's needs, and then it'd have the calendar. He'd have the calendar next to the phone, and it'd be like Palumbo, Junior USA, Scalese, you know, Pro Universe, you know, DeFendis, USA. You know, it'd have like the schedule of events and how many weeks out they are, and
That's
he'd
funny.
plan it all.
You know what's funny? You know, talking about that, I just found out. You know, my first contest I went was the Teenage Suburban, and there was 4 guys in the show. I didn't know Bob, and my friends told me I won after the prejudging. So I went back at night, and they said the top 3 guys come out. I think it was Dwayne Broadway. I think it was Casey Kacharik and somebody else. And so I went up to the guy with the clipboard. I said, you made a mistake. I'm supposed to be out there. And there was 4 guys in the class. They called the 3 guys out. And the guy looks at the clipboard. He said, "What's your name?" I said, "DeFendis." He said, "No, I'm sorry. You didn't make the cut." I said, "No, show. My friends told me I won the show." Anyway, Dwayne Broadway blew my ass off the stage. I never forgot the guy. You know, here it is like 40 years later, surfaced back up on Facebook. I'm like, "You're the guy that scared the shit out of me, you blew me off the stage." And I'll never forget the guy as long as I live. And now I joke back and forth with him. But now, today, on the thread that I wrote on Bob, I find out that, oh yeah, Dwayne, thanks to Bob, he's the one who trained me when I was a teenager. I'm like, but bitch, no wonder why I lost the fucking show. Bob trained them, you know? So
That's funny.
So then the other thing, you know, Chris was talking about Bob being a perfectionist. I trained the whole year for the USA in '88, and 6 weeks before the show, Bob flies down to Florida, and I'm excited. You know, he's gonna, you know, critique me. So, you know, he says, "Okay, you know, get in your trunks." You know, he's all right. You know, quarter turn. He's looking to hit double bites. Okay. So I'm like, "Well, so what do you think?" As soon as I'm there, you know, "Oh, we'll go out to dinner." You know, Bob didn't tell you right away sometimes. We'll go talk. If it was bad fucking news, you're going to dinner. So we go to dinner. I'm sitting at dinner. I'll get this built up in me. Man, I'm excited. I look good, you know. And so I said, "So, Bob, what do you think?" He says, "Well, I think next year we should do the show next year. Maybe take the year. I trained the whole freaking year, you know, right?" So he says, "Yeah, well, your hamstrings, you know, your hamstrings are, you know, they're just not there. You're just not, you know, you're not, you know, your hamstrings will hold you back." Now, Mahalik, we do 60 sets for quads in his gym, and then he'd go get laid and tell me to do hamstrings. No, I'm not kidding. The guy would be, there's a Bethpage Motel across the street from the house. Jerry knows. And so we would do 60, I'm not kidding, the 60 hardest sets of freaking legs you ever can imagine, screaming pain like you never felt. And then he would go, "All right, do hamstrings. I'm going to do them later. I got to go." "Where you going?" "I got to go to Bethpage Motel." Right? He'd go across the street. I'd be on the leg curl machine on my first set of leg curls looking out the window. The second his Corvette left the parking lot, I was in my car. I was out. I missed hamstrings for 2 years, 60 sets of legs with this madman, and then skipped hamstrings. So now I'm getting ready for the USA, and my hamstrings suck, right? So Bob goes, "You got to go 3 o'clock in the morning." You know, I was training twice a day. I was training at 7 in the morning. I was training at 8 o'clock at night and working all day. He said, "You got to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, go to a 24-hour gym, and do hamstrings." So that's what I was doing. I was getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning, doing hamstrings, coming home, eating breakfast, training at 7, working all day, training at 8 at night. I was doing hamstrings like 4 days a week.
Wow.
Just try to catch up, right? And then I get to the USA, and I'm backstage with Jimmy Quinn, and Troy Zucolato was sitting there. Renell Janvier comes over, and he bends over to pick up a 25-pound plate. and it looks like somebody took a linoleum knife to his ass. You know, and Chris knows. He knows Grinnell. So he was shredded, his ass and his hamstring. And the second I seen it, I'm looking at him and I go, that's it, I lost. I can't beat this guy. But, you're looking at one body part. Haney couldn't have beat those hamstrings, and those boots.
Right.
So, but Bob.
He lit a fire under you.
Chris, these guys will tell you, he was always on it. And he didn't care. Here's where we're at. Let's wait another year or whatever he thought,
Let me tell you something about Bob that's everyone here will agree with in terms of contest.
Let me tell you guys a story. I was guest posing at Long Island one year, and I was huge, but I was out of shape. So I'm sitting in the park at 11 o'clock, and I get a knock on my window, and it's Bob. He's like, roll the window down. He's like, if you ever look like that again, he goes, I'll be your friend for life, but I'll never help you.
Wow.
He walked away. I closed the window up. And it's going by 11:30, 12. I'm still sitting in that parking lot, and I'm saying, this guy's my friend, but it clicked right there that he demanded perfection, Bob.
Yep.
And after that was, it lit a match under your ass, and that was a deferring moment right there.
If you listen to Bob, listen, I've prepped so many people for bodybuilding contests, and I always tell Bob, I used to call him and say, hey, Bob, so-and-so just won the New York Pro. All because of you, Bob, because everything I learned, I stole from you. And he was laughing. But Bob never made a bad call in his life. Anyone who's ever worked with him, you could just say, Bob, tell me exactly what I need to do. It could be 3 hours out, 13 hours out, 3 days out, or 6 weeks out. If you listened, he never made the bad call. Even if you thought, like, he don't know what the hell he's talking about. I can't do hamstrings at 4 a.m. This is insane. He don't know what, you'd start to doubt him. But if you put your trust in him, he would never lead you down the wrong path. And I have seen him in that damn cellar, 4 days out, I'm thinking, this guy is not going to make it to the show. And Bob's like, well, we got 93 hours. We got 93 hours. And then the next day you say, he's still not going to make it. And then the day before, it's like, well, we got to pull back. You might peak too early.
Hey, Chris does that so good. When I'm feeling like I'm missing Bob, Chris, I'm going to call you and you can do that voice.
Johnny, listen, Johnny. He would say, I tell DeFendis all the time, you're training too much, John. You're training too much. Stop chasing the girls. Focus on yourself.
I gotta share a few stories about all of you guys and about Bob. Jerry, I remember. I don't know where we were, but I think we were with your wife or something at the time, someplace walking around New York. And it was about the Charlie Claremont, and Bob was there, and he goes, I think it was something about that you stayed with Charlie. You stayed with him for a couple of weeks when you were over there doing some tours.
Yeah, I trained with him for 3 months over there.
Right, and so you're saying something about Charlie went on to be just a dynamo. He was a phenomenal. And your wife goes, yeah, you jackass or something, and you taught him everything you knew, and this is what was going to happen. You taught him all that stuff, and he came in better shape for the next 5 years. He won the NAVA Pro Universe.
You're right.
Yeah, Jerry, you're dumbass. But
you gave him all the Gruskin secrets.
That's it. They slip out. John, I won the AAU USA, and I remember you and I were in contact. We did that the same year. And we had you had one side of the page and I had the other side of the page in muscular development, I think, or something like that. It was the two Mr. USAs for 1988. And I remember looking at that and talking with Bob about it. I'm like, but this guy's really huge, Bob. I tell you, I was never that big of a bodybuilder. Back to Chris's point about his voice. So I love Casey to death, and we competed in 2 shows, and we spent the time at the Universe together and the Mr. America, and that was a tough period for all of us because Bob was taking both Casey Kucherik and I to the Mr. America and the Mr. Universe. I have a little bit, I was a major geek and a major science guy. So my relationship with Bob, he didn't really make any changes to my diet, to anything. I never showed up, but he was like, well, you're gonna miss or something like that, because I was already doing it. For my birthday present, I had somebody get me the PDR, the physician's death record. So
Matt used to read. You used to read that at your house.
And so I knew the physiological way that aldactone would work with my body. I knew that stuff before I went to Bob. And then I would run my idea through Bob, and he goes, yes, it's the distal convoluted tubule. Yes, you're right. It does do that. And so, it was just our relationship. We could speak science and geek and all that sort of stuff. So I remember, and like I said, Casey and I have a good relationship, but that was a tough time because I was going to the America. I was staying with Bob. Casey lived literally in Jersey, so he didn't stay with him. I stayed with him for the week and a half before the America. I showed up at Bob's house, and Chris can attest to this. He saw me compete. I would show up at Bob's house a week and a half before at 225 220. Let's say 220, right. 219, 220. And I showed up on stage at the Mr. America at 198.
Wow.
Okay. So I knew.
That's where you get it, Chris, from.
What's that?
Aceto does that with his people. I'm like, how do you get these guys down 25 pounds?
Well, you can look in the mirror and you can see certain tells that the fat's gone. The fat is gone. The rest is, sub-Q water and bloat and stuff like that. And I'm like, I don't want to take that off. So I'd show up and I'd start doing my process with sodium and all that sort of stuff. And Casey and I would check in with Bob every night. Now, meantime, I'm going to the Metro and training and doing all these things. And so it's literally the week before the show, and Casey and I are in the basement. And again, Casey's going to watch this. And I was a snot-nosed kid. I am 23 years old. I've gone up the ladder pretty quick, and I've won the Mr. USA, and I want him in the Mr. America. And not only do I want to win the Mr. America, I want to win it in my backyard. It was in Worcester. I grew up in Springfield. That's, I got to go get this. And Casey's posing, and he's posing first in the mirror, and I'm like, yep. But what am I doing as I don't want to use the word technician, but as a competitor? I'm looking at each and every pose for how I would compete against that in a pose down. Because that's what you do, right, guys?
Yeah.
You look at your competitor and you say, how am I going to take that down? Casey leaves. Oh, no. So Casey says, yeah, I've been competing a long time. This year's my year. And your year's coming. You'll get it someday. Your year's coming. And I clamped on my tongue so hard I think I bled. And again, I love Casey. He leaves. Bob comes downstairs, and I go, I'm gonna beat him. And I stripped down to my little striped undies that looked like posing trunks. And I said, when he poses that, I'm gonna do this. When he poses this, I'm gonna do that. What does Bob do? He has a cigarette, or did he smoke a pipe? He had something in his mouth, and he's like,
Palumbo.
Yeah.
You never know. And he just he kept looking. He's turning sideways to me, and he's looking out of the corner of his eye as I'm posing, and I know he's looking at the pose, and I'm like, I think I got him on shape. I think I got him on this. And I think I can do this. I think I can beat him. And it came down to a 1-point decision, and the Massachusetts judge voted against me. So, you take that in and you say, I did it, and then it happened in the universe. But Bob would be, he wouldn't commit to either one of us. He certainly never said to Casey that he came out and talked to me on the concourse and said, you're going to be Mr. Universe. He never said that to anybody. It was just between me and him. And it was just a crazy, crazy time in our lives being with that guy.
Matt and Chris and Jerry, Dave, I've been looking through all the comments in the thread that I posted about Bob, and looking at the champions, you guys, and then looking at the photos of all of you guys. I just sit there and say, holy shit, look what this man did for so many of us. And we all had that look, Yep. The Gruskin look that not only made Bob who he is and create his legacy, but when you look at Chris's athletes when they're on stage, or the people that Jerry trains and the people that I train, I don't know if you train anybody anymore, Matt, but I've trained over 600 champions, in Florida, mostly Florida and in here, and it's real simple. We learn one thing: conditioning wins.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if we get our athlete in that condition, they got the best shot of walking away with the title, and that's what Bob taught us, and he taught us how to do it and how to do it really well.
Well, and remember the attitude: if you're not doing it, somebody else could be out there doing it.
Yeah.
So that one thing, is it that one workout? Is it that one bit of food that you should or shouldn't eat? Is it that one bit of sleep? Is that one bit of science? And somebody else could be out there doing it. And we learned that from Bob. We don't leave. We got conditioned to never leave a rock unturned.
Yeah.
On our quest to winning a show.
Well, the most demoralizing thing ever is if you pose for him and he'd give you he'd say you're fat. You're right. What do you mean I'm fat? I'm for 9 weeks out, I'm as hard as a rock. He'd say, you're fat.
But you know what I find fascinating though. Everyone tells the story, and I think your story was really pretty telling, because Bob was such a nurturing grandfather, father figure to you guys. It seems like everyone has that same story. You almost describe you're talking about the ideal father you could ever have, right? Because he's there, he supports your bodybuilding. He'll pick you up when you fall. He'll be the guy to solve your problems if you don't look your best. He'll take you out to eat. I mean, this is a fatherly type figure we're talking about. But if you fuck up, he will tell you and call you out. I mean, Jerry, for him to tell you that, look, I'll never train you again. I mean, that's some tough love right there. You must have really been fucking around if he had to have that kind of a talk with you. And it obviously changed your whole outlook on bodybuilding, right?
Yeah, I mean, I sat in that parking lot for 2 hours. The lights were going down, and I'm like, geez, this guy's my good friend. And you get home, and I always trained hard, but the other shit I just took it half-assed, the diet and whatever else. But I never not trained hard, and then I just put everything. And 87 and 88 was like my best years, and then I just walked away after 88. I don't know why, but I just did.
Jerry, you were really good. Jerry, did Bob ever say you were wasting your talent because you kind of left early and walked away from it?
No, I never really tell anybody the story. I think maybe I don't know, maybe a few people, but in 88, after 88, I was going to go back to the NBC, okay, because I finally learned with the weight classes of how to go in full, and for a couple of years, I kept dropping down the light heavies, and for the nationals, I took 6 2 years in a row. I just wasn't getting it right. Finally, 87 and 88, good. So in 89, I guest posed everywhere, and I was going to hit the 90 USA. And I got to tell you, I posed at a lot of NPC, and Jimmy let me pose at all of them. They never said anything. I posed at the North Atlantic down in Carolina. If you remember that, I think Gillespie. I used to run the USA.
Yep.
And I came off the stage. I mean, I trained for that guest posing like it was a show. Because I know you see guys, and he came running up to me. You're going to hit my USA next year? I said, yeah, I'm just training all year right now. In 89 and then 90, I'm going to come back. And that's the year they drug test.
Oh. Yeah, you're right. They did drug test. We're losing Jerry here. I think you broke him up. You're breaking up, Jerry.
I think Dave.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry's frozen over there. There's one thing I want to say, and I think we'll all agree to it. The one thing that Bob said, and even I have a book called Mr. America that somebody wrote, and it's even in the book. The one thing that Bob instilled in every one of us is that bodybuilding is a hobby. It's not a career.
Right.
And you need to do something with your life. You need to, instill the same work that you put into bodybuilding into life itself, into a career where you can make a living for you and your family, And he was very strong on that. And thank God he was, because, if you grow up looking at the magazines and you see, Sean Ray with old cars and houses, and you see, you think, oh, that's from bodybuilding. When in essence, it's not. It's from everything else. That the person puts their efforts into. So I think that's the biggest lesson Bob taught us outside of bodybuilding was don't rely on bodybuilding for a living. And if you can make money in bodybuilding, that's great. But always have a backup plan.
I found it fascinating too that Bob. And Chris, you can validate this if I'm not accurate. I'm pretty sure I am. Bob never charged anyone a penny for his help. Matter of fact, he probably spent way more money on you guys than he probably should have. And
hey guys,
right?
Yep.
I mean, and Bob didn't charge people for coaching them, right? It was because he loved it.
No. The only thing that Bob would do is if he set up a tour or a guest posing, he would take a microscopic percentage, and it was so worth it. I mean, the guy spent money on us, and it was a losing financial proposition for, as I will quote Bob, for his sons. And which all of us were, I never begrudged forking over money when he set up a tour in England or Belgium for me or something like that. It was God bless the guy,
He spent so much money. I think he gave money to everybody and spent money on everybody. I mean, and it's funny because you don't really know that. I look back and I'm reading these letters, say thank you for the money, thank you for this. I have probably, no joke, 150 cards and letters that I've written to Bob that are in my file that I got back 2 weeks ago, that literally 3-page letters where I'm thanking him for everything he did, because I truly realized that this guy was the key to my success in bodybuilding.
But Don, he saved all those letters?
He saved every letter I gave him. I got look at this. This is just one file.
Wow.
And it's all cards and letters. Thank you cards and letters. And and this is back at a time where you didn't make a long distance phone call. I was in Arizona. It was $5 a minute to make a long distance phone call, So, letters, cards that I writ, back and forth, letters, letters that, this is all letters that I wrote to Bob. And I'm reading every single letter. I was showing my girlfriend the other day is, I have to win. I have to be a champion. I'm depending on you. And my head was so fucked up because I looked in the mirror and I would see, no matter what I was looking at, I'd see shit, And Mahalik did that to me because Mahalik was the epitome of perfectionist. That's why the guy never really hit his peak, because he would ruin his body getting ready for a show. He would over diet, overtrain. He would do everything. So, because he was such a perfectionist. And so I had Gruskin and I had Mahalik, and both of them being perfectionists. And I just, it's a blessing, but it's also a curse, because you go through life never feeling that you've accomplished what you want to accomplish. You're always it's always the next goal, And I look back, I say, you know what? The one thing I never did is I never smelled the roses. I was always looking at the next goal, the next goal, the next goal. And before you know it, bang, I'm going to be 62 in 4 weeks. And I'm going,
Congratulations.
Wow. Now I'm getting all these pictures and all these things, and I'm reading through them and going, wow, I missed that. I missed it. I was so into what I was doing that I didn't capture the essence of how great it was. Having this person there to help me and having great people like you guys around, and to sharpen me. I mean, iron sharpens iron, and this is all that iron that made the difference,
Jerry, you had some of the best pictures I've ever seen that you've been putting up recently from your files that you got from the Bob Gruskin's house. I mean, unbelievable shots he had of you. They're on your Facebook.
I got the same as John. I still got old cards from Bob. He still had pictures of my kids that are in the folder.
Wow.
And just everything, birthdays, and you look back and you read all the workouts and the protocols, and you're like, oh wow, I took that. Like it was just like a scribble. You couldn't even read it, but
yeah,
and you're looking at it every day almost. I'm opening that folder every day and just going through the workouts and.
Well, he saved everything. It's amazing.
Dude, I got letters and cards that ex-wives and girlfriends wrote to Bob after we broke up. She's going, what is this shit? Are you kidding me?
Well, Jeff King told the story before we actually started recording, where he said that he got a card in the mail with like a $50 check from Bob, and Bob said, I was going to go to the horse races and play it, but I wanted to bet on a sure thing.
We used to go to OTB all the time. But hey, when I stayed there for weeks, we would go to OTB, and even in England, we would go bet the horses in England too.
Jerry, did you hear what Dave said? He said, I was going to bet this on a horse, but I wanted to bet it on a real winner.
On a sure thing. He said, I want to bet on a sure thing, and he gave it to Jeff. Yeah, gave the money to Jeff.
That's just amazing. I mean, that shows you who Bob was, Yep.
Well, guys, I want to thank all you guys for joining us. It was truly enjoyable as a fan of the sport for me to hear these stories about Bob. Because I didn't work with him. I only met him, a couple times, and obviously went to his house once just and had the experience of it. But you guys lived the Bob Gruskin experience, and you guys are now passing it on to the next generation, especially Chris with all his clients and his Mr. Olympias he's got under his belt. So I think that if there is a heaven, and I know there is, Bob's watching over this and probably smiling. And before I take you out, what would Bob be saying right now? Give me each. I'm going to go to each one of you guys that are left. What would Bob be saying watching this show right now? Jerry, go to you first.
What would he say?
Would he be embarrassed or would he be happy, you think?
Oh, Bob would be. He's got a huge smile on with the black glasses on right now.
Yep.
And with that little cigarette, and he might be having his little notebook out with the pen writing it. I don't know. One of you guys talk. I'm just
Matt.
I tell you what he would do. He wouldn't want to be in the picture at all. He would want to be put on the outside, and he really wouldn't. He'd be proud, but he'd also be a little embarrassed because Bob didn't want the limelight. It was about us. It was about us. It was about if he was with Matt, it was about Matt being a champion. If he was with Chris, it was about Chris being a champion. And same with Jerry, same with myself. It was never about Bob. He didn't want money. He didn't want accolades. He just wanted the fulfillment in his heart to know he made a difference in our lives. And that's really what was the most amazing thing about him.
He would definitely not want the limelight. He would be smiling. He would be very appreciative and happy, but he would say, and I can tell you that these would be his exact words. He said, I just love you all. You're all like my sons. You mean the world to me, and I'm glad that you're happy. And you just mean so much. But he would reject the limelight, and he'd probably be super embarrassed about all this. But we'd be busting his balls anyway because he was our Bob. He was our second father to many of us.
Dave.
Final word, Chris.
Well, I just think of this is that we can come on this show, the 4 or 5 of us, and praise Bob endlessly. But for the 5 of us who have been on the show, there's another 500, not 50.
5,000.
There's I saw Pat Lanzillo. There's Mike Quinn. There's Mike Antorino.
Nico, Joe DeAngelis.
There's Lee Haney. I mean, you can. The list is endless.
Every IFBB called him while I was there on that machine. Bob,
Who did?
You help me.
Who?
every IFBB guy while I was in that room, Bob, this is so-and-so. Can you help me? Bob, this is so-and-so. Can I help you? And he would just look at me, and we would laugh.
Jerry, there was one night I was staying at his house, and it was pouring crazy rain, and I was getting ready for some show, and then New York Pro, Night of the Champions was 2 days before, and at 3 a.m, out of desperation, Frank Richards and someone else came banging on the door because they were holding water. It was like a Thursday night. And Bob was like, who's at the door? There's a cab. And it was Frank Richards and someone else, whoever else was it. And that was Frank, came into the show like crazy. And they were both in the show and they were holding water and they came to Bob's house to be able to
He helped him? What did he do? Did you even listen to what he did with them?
He let him in and posed him downstairs. Frank Richards and someone else. I don't know who.
Yeah, that was Frank. That was when Frank made the comeback.
Yeah, and he looked crazy.
Yeah.
Dave, the one thing I'd like to mention at the end here is the scale and the mirror is always, it means so much. Like when we see, I took a picture of the scale and the mirror.
Who has that scale and mirror now? It's got to be worth money.
Yeah.
Richie Palatano's picking it up, and he said he's going to deliver it to me. So he's going to deliver it to me because he wants me to have it.
Yeah, you should definitely have it. One of you guys should have it. Maybe Chris should have the
scale
mirror.
and the mirror. And Bob would say, "Get on the scale," or let's get. He'd pull that mirror out and he put it next to his desk, leaning against his desk.
By the way, just for the people who don't know, it was like a little one of those mirrors that hangs on the back of a door. It was about 6 inches wide.
It was always dirty.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you got to laugh because you figure, people training people for big shows, and they got the lighting and they got this. That. Wow, here's the fucking mirror. Get up
with one light bulb above you.
And when he said, "Let's see what you look like," you're going, "Oh, the pressure." You're going, "Oh my God, this is the moment I'm going to find out if I suck or if I got any chance of winning this show."
Listen, Dave, we could talk for hours, but not only did he cook for you, he'd bring you into the gym and train with you, even though he never touched a weight in his life.
Do every angle.
He'd put together the posing routines for people. He had a Bob Gruskin patented posing routine.
Dave, you know what he used to do? I took home so many of his anatomy books, and he told me to read them on each muscle, how they worked. And he knew how every muscle worked.
Yep.
Let me tell you a story. People don't know if Matt Mendenhall would have stayed with him, because that's why Matt looked great for the first when he lost to Lee Haney, and then Matt left Bob. And if Matt would have stayed with Bob, I would say Matt would have won a couple of Olympias. Matt Mendenhall.
Hey, Jerry, what do you think? I told that Matt to stay away from who? Which chick?
Rachel
McLish.
Yep. Matt, hey, Chris, 82. I was a favorite. Me and Rory Liedermeyer were in Muscle and Fitness, the favorite to win the America that year. That was last year. It was the America. And all year I trained for the show. The whole year I was in the best shape of my life. And I didn't know Gruskin was helping Mendenhall too, getting ready for the show. And so I said, "Bob, man, I'm ready. I'm, the whole thing." So 6 weeks before the show, Bob sends me the black and white pictures of Mendenhall he took outside. Triceps.
I've seen those pictures. Nuts.
Huh?
He looked nuts, Mendenhall, in those pictures.
Crazy. Those pictures. Triceps completely striated. I looked at the pictures and I went like this. I had the picture in my hand. I went, I ain't going in. and I was married at the time. My wife says, "What are you talking about? You trained all year for it." I go, "Look at this. You think I can compete with this?" She looks at it. I do just a look on her face. I'm like, I swear to you, when I seen Matt's pictures, when they came in the mail and I opened it up, I seen Matt's pictures. I went out and I bought those chocolate fudge pops, a big box of 24. And I sat there and I ate the whole box till I got sick. And then I went out and I got carob coated every. 2 days later, I looked like a water balloon.
Dave, he used to. Besides the routines, he used to tan you in the basement for the shows too.
That's right.
Yeah. He could have been a millionaire with that tan.
The Diaderm.
You guys remember he would put the ingredient in the Diaderm. He would never tell you what was in it.
Right.
That's
I
right.
actually knocked someone out with that Diaderm. I put it under their face, and it went right down to the floor.
You would hate it. It'd be like 3 days of pure agony standing there.
He used to cut a face
rag.
cloth. You remember?
Yeah, face cloth. Yeah, we put it on with the face cloth.
The rag, and you didn't dip in your face. It's funny because then, my girlfriend went to the tanning, but spray tan. She comes home and like, please, don't ever do that again. I smell the Diaderm from
we had the best
40 years ago.
Best tans, though. We had the best tans.
Yeah, you guys all did have good tans, Bob's guys. Absolutely.
Well, again, he learned how to eat everything. Everything had to be perfect.
Yeah.
Your conditioning, the tan, your posing, everything is all. See, guys, a lot of guys don't do that today. They put together a shitty routine a week before the show. They don't practice it, and they just get up on stage and wing it.
You know what, John? Here, I always say, this is what, and Chris knows, I say this all the time. The only 3 things we have control of in bodybuilding when you compete is your tan, your presentation, and your conditioning. Everything else is genetic, and the work has already been put in the gym. And Bob was not to steal from Chris, the original technician in that sense. He
100%.
didn't leave any stone unturned with conditioning, with tan, presentation. He had that formula down pat, and we've all stolen from him because you know what? I got my information from Doug Wentz, who got it from him. Chris, gives his information to everyone. Everyone steals from Chris. So 90% of that information that Bob created is all over the place now. And a lot of people don't know it came originally from Bob. I don't know how he came up with it or how he perfected all of it, especially since he wasn't a bodybuilder himself. He didn't work out himself. He never posed himself. But he had a great eye, and that's really what made him special.
Dave, I always kid. But I'm serious. Like when they say, oh, so-and-so, how, this guy's got to get it together. I say on the show all the time, well, if he lived in Bob's basement for like 6 months, he'd demolish everyone.
Yeah,
I remember before the America, Bob was looking at my hair, and he goes, you need a Mr. America haircut. And so he actually brought me to some place in the Bronx, and he's like, this is what I want you to do. And he had my hair trimmed and put just the right way with just the right amount of gel in it. And he goes, that's the way you need to go on stage.
Yep.
And I'm like, all right, he's going to do what he says.
You know what I couldn't stand is like, I was all into the hardcore training. You guys know how I am with my workouts. And, so Bob goes, hey, we're going to do some photos for the magazines, we'll go to the gym. And he said, okay, get in posing trunks. I'm like, what do I get in posing trunks for? Well, Robert Kennedy likes, you got to, for muscle man, you got to wear posing trunks. I don't train in posing trunks. We had an hour fight in the gym. Me and Bob in the gym alone having a fight. I'm not wearing posing trunks and do fucking 300-pound hack squats with posing trunks on, right? I'm like, barefoot. But that's what Bob Kennedy wants, Bob Kennedy wants. I can't do Bob like Chris does, or Matt even, but I hated the posing trunk training pictures. I wanted the hardcore,
Barbarian brother pictures,
shit, But we had a lot of fights over it. I always fought with Bob. I don't want to. Well, then you're not getting in the magazine.
Listen, you could never win a fight with Bob. Whoever won a fight with Bob? Jerry, could you win a fight with Bob? He'd wear you down and he'd say, okay, Jerry, do it your way. Do it your way.
Yeah, no, he would. He would just turn around, walk away.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that's what you do. Say, do it your way. Yeah. Exactly. You never won that fight.
Well,
but
Bob,
then again, Bob's a tourist, so he's a bull.
Hey, Jerry.
I'm sure in summation here, guys, I know we could probably talk forever, but we got to wrap this up. Bob, if you're up there watching over us, I hope you understand how much love there was for you in our industry from all these guys on our panel, from all the people out there you've helped. I felt a very, very positive vibe on Facebook and Instagram this past couple days since you guys posted about Bob, passing. And it was the first positive vibe I had felt since that whole coronavirus went down. Now, interestingly enough, I'm going to extend the show a little more now. Chris, you said that Bob was big proponent of this whole doomsday scenario of a virus gone crazy into pandemic stage. Is that true?
Bob had a PhD in biology.
Yep.
And he used to scare me to death. I said this not on the radio show, Dave, or we might have said it, but I told you 3 weeks ago that his number one fear was a pandemic, because that's what he knew. He knew,
microbiology and yep.
And when Jeff King was on, Jeff said, yeah. He agreed. He used to scare Jeff sometimes with the microbiology talk, with the virus talk. And when I found out that he went into a coma, unfortunately, I said,
maybe he had a premonition that that's how he would die early on, because that's exactly. I mean, from what I understand, he got the COVID virus and the COVID-19, and that's eventually what was the cause of his death. So,
you know what I can say, Dave, about Bob. Really, as much as he's influenced us, and I don't know these guys. I don't know Jerry very, very well, and Matt. We haven't talked for years, and John
right.
and stuff, and
we need to fix that, by the way.
I know, but we're half the men Bob was.
Yeah. I concur.
No doubt. No doubt. I talked to Bob about 5 days ago, and I think that I knew that it wasn't good, because Bob never wanted to ever depend on anybody else, ever. He always wanted to be the caregiver. And when Bob was put in a position where he no longer was in charge of taking care of himself, I think that's when it really mentally it destroyed him. I could feel it in his voice, and when I said, "He all right?" All he cared about was, "Hey, how's Lisa? How you doing?" This. All he cared about. He wanted to talk about me, and I said, "Well, I'm concerned about you, Bob." "Oh, I'm fine. But I knew he wasn't, because I could just tell. But a lot of it came from his will to live. I don't think he no longer had a will to live, because he no longer was in charge of himself.
Right. Right. Well, I believe we find a way out when it's time to find a way out. And Bob's time was done, but he had so much. He contributed so much to our sport, to the love that you guys have in your hearts now. I could sense it. I feel it. And he changed a lot of people and made them better people. And he made you guys better men than you were before. And I think that that's a great gift that he gave you guys, and you'll continue to give, and you're passing on to future generations. So in that respect, Bob's contribution was way greater than his coaching skills. It was really his life lessons that he taught you guys. And I want to thank you guys for joining us on this special tribute to Bob Gruskin. Thank you, Jeff King, Matt Dufresne, John DeFendis, Jerry Scalese, of course, my compatriot in crime, Chris Aceto, and hopefully I'll be able to get all you guys on for your own interviews over the next couple of weeks, so I can get you full stories. Even though we got some great stories here, I know you guys have a lot more to tell, and I want to thank you for joining us. For now, though, I am Dave Palumbo with the Bob Gruskin tribute here at rxmuscle.com. If you like this video, give us ideas. Tell us who you want to have on the show. If you want to hear more Bob Gruskin stories, I'd be happy to do this again. We will see you next time. Bob Gruskin, you will be missed, but not forgotten.
Be safe, guys.
Be safe.
Congratulations, Chris, on all your success, too, and love you guys. Miss you, and